and they weighed in on this 6-3 majority ruling that the legal basis of IEEPA, which the president used to impose these tariffs, that legal basis is gone. That bottom is gone. Does he have any other legal avenue to try and bring this through the back door, or any other? What's the next step really as far as Trump is concerned? Because he's not going to. I don't foresee a situation where he's just going to give up on these tariffs.
I don't think he's going to give up on the tariffs, but he'll have to now go through Congress. And basically discriminatory tariffs on different countries, etc., is probably what the Supreme Court has ruled against. We'll have to see the details of the judgment. But the important thing is that this is a surprise, because the U.S. Supreme Court has a 6-3 balance in favor of conservative judges, at least 3 or 4 of whom were directly appointed by President Trump himself. So it's a little bit of a surprise that they voted 6-3 against.
So three conservative judges flipped, including the Chief Justice, John Roberts.
Yes. So John Roberts has flipped. This is a really an earth-shaking event politically in the U.S. And what will have to happen is that he'll now have to go to Congress and formulate a bill that has these different tariffs to different countries, or he'll perhaps have to find some sort of legal justification for why there are different tariff levels for each country, and convince Congress that Congress should pass legislation exactly in line with what he has come up with.
And there it may not be easy. There it may not be easy because Rahul, it's a midterm election year. There are Republican congressmen and women who, in some of these swing districts, who are finding it difficult to sell some of these policies of President Trump. So running up the numbers there might not be that easy.
In fact, already a large number of lawmakers have come out and said that they're not going to allow this. So there is, I don't know if it's bipartisan, and maybe Mr. Raymond Vickery can sort of elucidate on that, but I'm told that there is a lot of resistance, and it's coming primarily from business that are lobbying lawmakers to say that, look, I think this has gone too far. Now, if you remember, there was something like this that happened, especially with steel sector and so on and so forth, under Trump 1, and he had to roll back a lot of those tariffs that he had imposed back then. So there is pressure on obviously the American economy, and that's going to reflect somehow in the overall calculations. But in the immediate, I wonder what happens. Do those countries that have been sort of milked, for lack of a better word, do they now get recompensated? Is that what's going to happen? Because those numbers go into the billions. Azaka, and in fact, I'm just reading this piece because just a few days back, and this is BBC, Trump says he's awaiting very eagerly this particular judgment, because he says that without all of this, in this uncertainty, he's going to find it very difficult to move forward, because billions and billions of dollars will leave America.
So he's not going to pay back. I'm pretty certain about that. The monies that have been collected so far, and there are varying estimates. I think Scott Bessent at one point said they're hoping to get $300 billion in this financial year.
He said everybody would be bankrupt if this decision came against these tariffs.
So I want to go back to Raymond Vickery on this. So the steel and aluminum tariffs, those have been exempt in today's judgment, in as much as they have said that is fine. The section that he's used under IEEPA for steel and aluminum, which is separate for the other tariffs, that the court has upheld. It's the rest of the broader tariffs that the court has struck down on. Will Trump go back and use those sections which are perhaps kosher in the IEEPA to then bring back the tariffs either through executive order or go back to Congress and ask for and try and rally up the numbers there? Mr. Vickery.
Well, let's face it, President Trump is an expert at what we call lawfare, which is warfare through the courts. He's not going to give up easily on this. As has been said, he should go back to Congress and get authorization for this, since Congress has the constitutional authority. But you can bet that's not going to be his first move. His first move is going to be to try to find loopholes within this judgment in order to be able to do what he's trying to do illegally, to try through another method to get it done. So he will separate out, for example, tariffs based upon from those which are the so-called Liberation Day. He will look for, he has already looked for other authority, legal authority, other methods to be able to accomplish the first move to take. But the good news here is that, you know, for 250 years, we've survived in American democracy through some really tough periods. We do have, though, a way to be able to go forward constitutionally, and that is going to be, it seems to me, working out over the days and weeks and months to come. But as far as money being paid back, it's not being paid back to the countries involved. The people who've been paying these tariffs are the businesses of the United States of America, by and large. Now, some of it's been passed on to consumers, some passed on to suppliers through lower prices. But it's really, the plaintiffs in this case are small businesses in the United States who have been disadvantaged. And so it's not a monumental task. This is a lot of money in billions of dollars, but compared to the federal budget, it's not all that great. It can be handled in terms of the logistics and the payback. So that's not the problem. The problem is whether or not we'll be able to deal on a constitutional and legal basis in terms of the next steps, particularly with other great democracies like India and in Western Europe. I predict there's going to be a period of uncertainty, but certainly a signing ceremony seems to be off based upon something which has been ruled illegal by the United States Supreme Court.
Okay, let me also try and see if we can get Siddhant. Is there any reaction from the MEA or from any industry body here, Siddhant, on this monumental decision by the Supreme Court of the United States striking down the Trump tariffs? The India deal, I believe a team was set to go to the US on Monday. Yeah. Does all of that now sort of be put on hold?
Well, Zaka, it's too early to perhaps react to this particular judgment by US Supreme Court. But what I can tell viewers is that this morning I met US Ambassador Sergio Gore. In fact, I was a part of the selected group of journalists he briefed at Bharat Mandapam. And in fact, this question was asked to Ambassador Gore that when officially the trade deal is going to get signed, what's the status? Because so far, the executive order has been signed by President Trump to remove the 25% additional punishment tariff on India for buying Russian crude. The second executive order to reduce the initial tariff on India is still not signed by the US Trump administration. So that is still pending. Point number one. Point number two, Mr. Gore said that next week US Indian teams are going to the United States. He said that both sides are in touch. And in fact, he said that very soon we are going to sign a trade deal with India. So definitely, we will seek response from Ministry of External Affairs, from the Trade Ministry here in India. What do they have to say on this entire judgment by the U.S. Supreme Court? But Zaka, ahead of this also, because this has been going on from a very long time, and we had been speaking to our friends here in government and trying to understand that what if U.S. Supreme Court gives such order, what would be our position, etc. So, most likely Trump is not going to give up. Perhaps he still has the route by legislating through the House, and that is something which is still an option for the Trump administration.
So again, I want to just underline this for our viewers. So there are certain parts of the tariffs that the Supreme Court has said is valid. It's the broad spectrum of tariffs which were invoked under a particular section of the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, which the court has deemed illegal. So what the president can do, Rahul, is perhaps go back to those other sections within that and pass another executive order, which will again have sweeping impact in terms of the number of goods that are covered under this IEEPA with a new executive order. I doubt, as Mr. Vickery said, his first recourse would be to go to the Congress, because there are lots and lots of Republican congressmen and women and senators who come from these suburban districts, who come from these industrial districts, who were saying that, we can't sell this back to our constituents. So I think this will have ramifications in the run-up to the midterms as well.
Well, viewers, let's go straight across and take stock of this story as we approach the top of 9 tonight, viewers. Very consequential decision has been taken by the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a 6-3 ruling, has struck down Donald Trump's tariff tyranny, so to speak. What we're being told is that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that the tariffs that were imposed by Donald Trump as he went about weaponizing trade are illegal. Not all of them, but a majority of them. And let me very quickly update you if you're just joining this big broadcast, because remember, this decision comes in the midst of protracted conversations between Delhi and DC over the Indo-US nuclear deal, over the Indo-US trade deal. And viewers, as you know, there is a signing ceremony expected to give concrete shape to this deal in the middle of March. A number of Indian top ministers and vice versa have been speaking to each other over the last 15 days or so, trying to work out the nitty-gritty of this deal so that this protracted conversation can be concluded in a manner that would be favorable to both sides. But largely there have been questions asked whether India had to succumb, had to surrender some of its interests, as some people have implied, because a gun was put to India's head, and that gun was a 50% tariff plus sanctions gun, so to speak, viewers. And India therefore had to come to the table and negotiate with Trump, and some people say not so favorable terms. What happens to that deal? Is that deal going to be iced? Has India's bargaining position dramatically improved? Will Delhi have leverage going forward? And what happens to all the money that has been realized by Donald Trump's administration on the back of the tariffs that he has imposed across the globe on goods that were being imported by American businesses and then sold to, of course, American consumers? Already I can tell you that the stock markets in America have reacted positively to this development. So it's Friday morning there in America right now, and the markets have opened, and all of them, at least till about 10 minutes back, seem to have suggested that they are in agreement and relieved that the Supreme Court has gone ahead and struck down Mr. Donald Trump's tariffs. The justices, says the Reuters copy, in a 6-3 ruling authored by conservative Chief Justice John Roberts, upheld a lower court's decision that the Republican president's use of this 1977 law exceeded his authority. Goes on to say the court ruled that the Trump administration's interpretation that the law at issue, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or the IEEPA, grants Trump the power he claims to impose tariffs, would intrude on the powers of Congress and violate a legal principle called the Major Questions Doctrine. So viewers, for a variety of reasons, legal reasons, these tariffs have been ruled illegal. Now, let me bring in Zaka Jacob, my colleague. Zaka, break this down for us in its implications, because this is a major development and has huge implications for New Delhi.
Oh, absolutely. 100 countries were the ones that he had issued that executive order against for tariffs on April 2nd, Liberation Day. Then because of the backlash from certain countries, he paused it for 3 months. And then finally in July, he started announcing one by one deals with Europe, with South Korea, with Japan, India was the one country which had not struck a deal with the United States, first because of the 25% tariffs, and then an additional 25% tariffs for the import of Russian oil. Finally, in January, we managed to, after that conversation between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, we finally managed to get an in-principle agreement where the 25% Russian oil tariffs would be taken off, and that executive order got signed earlier in February. And then he would reduce the first set of reciprocal tariffs from 25% to 18%. Now what has happened is, with the Supreme Court ruling, majority 6-3 judgment, the whole legal basis for imposition of tariffs has been taken off, which means the president either has to use another section of law, or he has to go back to the US Congress to try and rally up the numbers, to try and rally up the votes and get the US Congress to pass, under the same provisions of the Act, the IEEPA Act, the set of tariffs against 100 plus countries. Now, that is going to be an extremely difficult political and legislative process, I suspect, because... Yeah, go on.
You know, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we're being joined by Grant T. Harris, former Assistant Secretary of Commerce from the United States of America. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Both Zaka and I have questions for you. So we are going to ask you questions. Be patient, because I know that information is still trickling in, but we're going to try and understand the implications of all of this from you. Now, what happens next? We know that these tariffs have been ruled illegal. What can Trump do to perhaps challenge the Supreme Court or get things swung in his favor? Does he have options, and what are these options?
Thank you for having me. This is indeed a major development. One, it's very embarrassing for the administration and for President Trump, after leveraging these tariffs as both a threat and as a cudgel. And the Supreme Court has very clearly said that this statute is not available for the imposition of tariffs the way that this administration has sought to use it. There are options for the administration, and they have been making plans as a contingency to use other legal mechanisms to impose tariffs, and they've already taken some steps. There are other sections of U.S. trade laws and trade acts, including based on national security grounds. And so I believe that the administration, and as they've publicly said, is able to use these other mechanisms in many ways, but those ones aren't as fast and they aren't as nimble. They can't be done to the same degree or have the same impact. It'll be cobbling together alternatives.
What happens to all of these deals that Trump has struck with Japan, with South Korea? The India legal framework is going to be signed, I believe, in the next few days. A team was scheduled to go to the U.S. Next week. Does all of that get thrown out the window?
Not necessarily, no.